Hi everyone, welcome to the Innoveo Skye demo. For today we were going to do you an introduction to Innoveo Skye. As you know, Innoveo Skye is a no-code platform, so this means that people without any technical knowledge learn how to develop custom applications in a very fast way. And to do that, today we are showing you an internal application we have developed for the demo itself, and it's simulating a simple quoting process for car insurance. And to do that, we basically have on the first process step collecting 5 pricing inputs, like the car searcher, for example, in this input, where you can search for any car. And select the first registration date of the car, the date of birth of the driver. When you select the date of birth, you will see dynamically an input being displayed with the calculation of the age. And then when all the pricing inputs are defined, the premium calculation is triggered. Now you can see that depending on the driving experience, for example, a discount is being applied on the premium calculation. The highest the driving experience is, the biggest is the discount rate. And we're going to go one by one to each attribute and explain you how this works. So start with the first example. In case you have developed this application and now you want to do a change request, changing the label of this input that you see here, that it has the label select your vehicle, how would that work? So for that reason, I'm going to switch to the Innoveo Skye Business Canvas application. And here you can see on the left side the set of definitions that control the functionality that you see on that page. And then in the center page, you'll see the product definition, which in this case is this one. And each rectangle that I'm selecting currently corresponds to what we call an attribute. An attribute is responsible for what you see on the page or for a specific functionality. So in that case, that car searcher is this attribute that controls it, and I will change the label of it and I will activate it to that stage that controls that application. And when I activate and I switch back to the browser and I refresh the browser, you will see that now this input has a new label. Now this was a really simple example, right? So imagine you would like to add to this process step that you collect the parking, how the car is parked in the street usually, so that you can later add it as a pricing input. How would you do that? I will switch back to Business Canvas and I will add a generic attribute, as we call it. You see, you define the name, so nothing is hard-coded, everything is by configuration. And you had the parking, you can have the label, how is the car usually parked. You define where it should be visible. You select this visibility level. And you activate. And when you refresh the page, you have another input now. Now, of course, the user can type whatever you want. You could type garage, for example, and you will collect, but of course it's not the best user experience. You could have some pretty fine set of answers for this question. So to do that, you just need, for example, to change the input type to a radio button, let's say, and you create what we call a fixed value range in the platform. And you can say, for instance, the car is parked on a garage or in a public street or in the basement, for example. Just some dummy options so that we see them being displayed on the application. If you activate, going back to the application, refreshing, you will see the text box changes to 3 options that you have defined. Okay. Now let's have a look in more detail to each one of the inputs and explain it how it works. So for the car searcher, for example, as you see, when you type, you have an auto search feature where it can work in 2 different ways. On one side, you can integrate these car searchers with existing web services, and we will call that web service and fetch the list of results we should display on these drop-downs. And on the other side, you can search this data in a CSV file that you upload into the system, and we will populate the data that is fetched on that CSV file. In this example, the data is coming from a CSV file, which I will open to you right now, as you see here. And in this CSV file, we get not only the name of the car, the model, but also a lot of information that will later be used in the pricing rating, like the registration year, the engine size, the horsepower, the price, and even other data. This data can come from backend systems or external systems that you have pulled this data onto the CSV files, and you have mechanisms to recurringly update these CSV files if it's needed. If you go back to the business canvas, you can see on the attribute that is responsible for that, we show how we populate the data that is coming from the CSV file in other attributes, so that we can store them in our application, and later we will use it in the pricing engine, as you will see. So for example, the vehicle value is fetched from the column price in the CSV file, and you can see the vehicle value is this attribute which will store the vehicle value once the user selects a car here. So when the user selects a car here, what's happening on the background is that we are fetching all this data and storing it in some attributes. Now regarding data validation, take a look to this example. If you select a car that you can see it's from 2014, and we have an input that is called first registration date, it doesn't make sense that if the user selects the first registration date of 2013, this cannot be possible, right? So we display a message saying that the car cannot be older than 2014 and newer than today, because the car cannot be also, of course, produced later than today. So if we present a validation error message, now if you select a date from 2014, the data validation error disappears. Now take a look, that just to show you that this is not dummy, if you select a car from 2013 and you put the 2013 first registration date, then of course it will work. But if it's a date from 2012, the message is different, because we display the static part of the message, but we have ways of, by configuration, displaying the dynamic part of the message. So how does this work? Let me search for you the first registration input configuration, which is in this attribute, and we have what we call here a min-max value range. And the min-max value range defines that the minimum value has to be inside of this range. So as a minimum value, we put the product current year of the car that we fetch from the CSV file like you saw before, and the date cannot be latest than today. What about the pricing rating? How does it work? As you see here, when we select the 5 different pricing inputs, it triggers the premium calculation on the bottom left of the page, right? So I'm going to show you how does that work. Switching to the business canvas application, we have an attribute which are called Excel attributes, and the reason why is that we attach Excel files to it. So I'm going to open the Excel file and explain you how it works. When I open the Excel file, you will realize that we have 3 sheets on the bottom left of the page. The first one that we have to take care of is what we call the inputs. So we will map the inputs that are coming from the application that we want, that is considered in the rating engine, and we will map here. If you can see, we have engine size, vehicle value, the age of the customer, and some of these inputs are coming either from the CSV or from the user interface that we see on the page. So for example, focus on the driving experience. Okay, driving experience is the input that you see here, and these are the values that the user can select. And in our model in the business canvas, driving experience is this. That's why it's mapped main driver driving experience. So in the model, what will happen when it runtime, Skye will populate on this cell the value that the user has selected for that specific input. And then what you can do with the Excel, with the functions that you know from Excel, you can build whatever algorithm and calculation logic that you would like to. In this case, for demo purposes, we built a simple pricing algorithm so that we can explain you how does that work in a more easy way. And we have here basically 5 cost factors: the engine size, the vehicle value, accessories, driver's age, and years with experience, which is the driving experience. And you can see that depending on the value, so if driving experience equals 0, we don't give any discount, but if driving experience equals 1, we give a 2% discount. If it's 2, we give a 5% discount, and so on. So what we are doing here is that we fetch the input, as you can see in this cell, from the inputs sheet, okay? Then we will do basically is do a VLOOKUP on this table so that we can see what is the discount that we want to be applied, and we will store here the value of the discount. And then on this cell, this is where we are putting the logic. What we are doing basically in this case is multiplying all these factors that you see on this page. So the last thing at this point that we need to do is map the output. What will be the output of the Excel? So in this case is this cell, right? So for this reason, there is the second sheet, which is Skye lookup output, where we are mapping the product premium, which in the application corresponds to this input, and in the model is this one. So now we just need to say that you need to write on this attribute the value that is on the algorithm sheet. Okay, so let's just do a simple change. First, let me just select this car and driving experience 1, and remember that the premium is $720 for this case. Now if I go back to the Excel sheet and I select the different cost factors for the driving experience 1 and I save it, I go back to the business canvas, attach the latest Excel file which has my latest algorithm, I activate it, and if I go back to the browser and refresh, select exactly the same car, the same first registration date, the date of birth, and I select now driving experience equals 1, you see that instead of 720 it's 73,500. Now the reason why we did this in Excel are two reasons. First, we saw in the insurance market that actuaries, most of them were actually still using Excel to come up with their pricing logics and their algorithms that they need to do. So by doing this in Excel, we allow actuaries to give the Excels to the teams that are controlling the business canvas, and all in a sudden you just need to upload the Excel, and without doing any code change, your algorithm is updated to the platform itself. Okay. So summarizing, first, because actuaries were already using it, and second, because it's much faster to do it this way, because you don't need to code anything else. Now, we have seen very complex algorithms done in this way, implemented in Skye with Excel. There is another option, which is the integration capabilities that Skye has, that if the insurance company already has a backend system that is responsible for the rating engine, what we do is that we will call that rating engine and send the parameters, and we will collect back the result, and we will display it on the UI. Now imagine the flexibility that this can give you. So remember the attribute we added in the beginning as base with the where is the car parked, usually parked, which has 3 options. Imagine you want that this is also included in your pricing rating engine. So how would this work? You just need back to the Excel file. We will go to the inputs and we will say that we want also the parking attribute to be considered as a pricing input. We will say it's a mandatory input. This is for having more flexibility in the calculation. And every time the value changes, it should be trigger the algorithm as well. So now what we need to do is we go here and we say parking type. We will select the input. We will fetch the value from that cell. And we can say, for instance, let's just copy this here, and we say, okay, the values are basically basement, garage, public street. And we can say that we want, okay, let's just make a simple example, factor of 1, factor of 2, factor of 3. And now what we will do is that we will search for that. So we will do a VLOOKUP of the input on the table, fetch the second column when it matches. Let's just see if this is working well. Of course not, because this is not what I want. Exactly, so it's working well. And now I just need to update this value here and say that this input should also be taken into consideration. So I just update it. And now we're gonna save this motor Excel. We're gonna update it here. We activate, and now if you go back to the application and we refresh, you will see that when we select the pricing inputs, it's not triggering. Why? Because this one still doesn't have a value, but as soon as we put basement, it has 1, multiplies by 2 if it's a garage, and multiplies by 3 with the public street. So this gives you enormous flexibility, because on the Excel itself you have a limited number of inputs and outputs you can write, and without coding anything you do all these changes on your algorithms in a very fast way. Additionally, just to add that although we are attaching Excels, the calculation don't run in Excel. So in terms of performance you don't need to worry about that, because what we are using is a Java library where we just map with the Excel the inputs, the outputs, and we check on runtime what are the calculations that needed to be done. So basically we translate what is coming from the Excel and on our own technology process all the calculations that are needed. What about integration capabilities? Skye has its own APIs, generic APIs that you can have always updated by configuration. So to demo you what I mean about this, I'm going to open a tool which is called SOAP UI, which can be used to simulate requests to some APIs, and you will see a response from that. So I will open that application and show you an example like we just did in the UI, but we will do it on the SOAP UI. So this is SOAP UI, and on the left side of this screen you can see a SOAP request. Okay, let's keep a lot of details here, but as you can see in these lines, driving experience is one of the parameters we will send on the request, and the value we will put value 1, so that now when we click play we will basically call Innoveo Skye API and we will get the response and see what we receive. So as a response, you see it on the right side. Basically what you get as a response is everything that is configured in the model in terms of inputs, and it triggers all the calculations and you get the updated value. So if we search now for the premium, you will see that the premium is 73,500 as the latest example on the UI, right? So this is how it works. Now, if you just do another request with driving experience 2, which we didn't change, for instance, you will see that in the request you will find that the premium is 698 at the same as it would be on the UI. Now take a look that another thing that we have is the attribute that we added on the beginning, which was called parking, right, which doesn't have a value because by default it doesn't have a value. Now watch out how these APIs are automatically updated by configuration. If I go now to the model and just delete this attribute and activate, and now I go back to the SOAP UI and I do another request, you will see now that on the right side you will not find the parking attribute, so parking not found. If you search on the response, you will see you will not find the parking attribute because it was automatically updated. It will work the same way as you add by configuration more inputs, more functionality. Your API will be automatically updated and can be used to integrate with backend systems or external systems. As a last point of this demo, I want to show you a bit the omnichannel capabilities. So you've seen we have reached this process by reaching this URL, which is hosted in the skytest.innoveo.com, and you didn't need any authentication to reach this process, right? But now let me open a new browser session and explain you what we can do. So if I go in a new browser session to the exactly same URL, so skytest.innoveo.com base URL, you will see you will land on a authentication page, which you have to provide the username, credentials to be able to log in. In this case, because Innoveo Skye also has a Skye user management module, which is also all configurable, like we are seeing the application itself. We have already created a user there, and we are simulating here a call center agent that is able to authenticate, or an agent portal, for example, an agent user, I mean. And imagine he has access to a dashboard, which everything is customized. And here we didn't work on that part of the demo. But my point here is to imagine you want to give access to the user so that when he reaches that step, you will have access to the same product we have seen on the public channel, which didn't have any authentication, which usually is used for direct channels, while here we will be in a private channel because you require authentication, and it can be used for any application that you would like to use. It might be an agent portal, a broker portal, a business to employee application, a customer portal, whatever. So in this case, let me just show you how quickly it is to replicate in our model the functionality that we have delivered on the public channel in a private channel. So for this, I'm just going back to the business canvas, and I will show you that I just need to go to the exact attributes which are in the direct channel. I edit their visibility, and I say that I want to see them visible on the direct channel. As well as these ones. And when I activate and I go back to the page and I refresh, we have exactly the inputs that we already had on the direct channel, right? With exactly the same logic. Now I'm just missing the process step labels and the picture on the top. So I'm going back to the business canvas. I will open another set of definitions, which are the process ones. Here is where you define all the workflows, how they should look like, if they have number of process steps, what will happen when you click on buttons, and so on. So you have all the freedom to do that. And in this case, I just need to, as I want to replicate exactly the same, I just need to go and select the picture that I want to see above the progress bar, and I will just put the process step labels. And now when I activate and I go back to the application, if I refresh, you'll see that everything is replicated. Now, of course, in real use cases, usually insurance companies want, depending on the distribution channel that you have, you will do different logic. You will collect more or less data, the pricing algorithm or the calculation and the business logic that you have will be different depending on the calculation. But in Skye, that's really easy because your model is already in place. So imagine in the direct channel, you want to have this question and collect this data, but not in the private channel like we are, right? So to do that, you just need to go to the application itself, and you say that this should be hidden, And when you go and refresh, you just see that the process is now different on the private channel, but on the public channel is still the same. So I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching the Innoveo Skye demo. Of course, there's a lot more functionality that we have, but as an initial introduction, this is what we can explain. If you would like to see more, please contact us, and we will be more than happy to show you more. Thank you.